welcome to this episode of the Martial Truth Podcast. My interview with Nick Adler, Sensei. I know Sensei Adler going way back since I'm 15 years old, so it's a long, long time we know each other. I mean, he's a senior practitioner of Isshin-Ryu Karate along with several other arts. Still teaching a few days a week at the young age of 86. Okay, so that's an inspiration for all of us. Don't stop, keep going. There's no retirement in martial arts. So I hope you enjoy this one. It's a fun interview. It's not as long as some of my other ones, but he says some very interesting things, and I think you'll like it. As always, please click that like, share, subscribe button. Consider becoming a member, all right? I just purchased a new cell phone, so I'll be starting to film some more videos soon for the channel and for the members. All right, so just be ready for that. And here we go, my interview with Nick Adler. All right, Sensei Nick Adler, welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast.
Thank you. How are you?
Good. So I know Sensei Adler since I'm 15 years old. Going back a long time now. He's been around in New York. He's one of the pioneers of karate in New York. He's hosted numerous tournaments, seminars, workshops. He's trained with a who's who of martial artists. And I just wanted to get him on and talk about it. He met the founder of Isshin-Ryu. He trained with Odo Sensei, Dan Inosanto. He's done it all. So Sensei, why don't you tell us how you got started in Isshin-Ryu Karate?
Basically, I boxed for like 10 years until I got out of the service, and I was looking around for something to do. And I went to a few karate schools, and they were a little too stiff for me, and long stances and so forth like that. And then I happened to run into the American Isshin-Ryu school. And Ed McGrath was teaching there, and he was a Marine. He was one of Nagel's seniors, and I liked his personality. I liked how hard they trained, a lot of sparring and so forth. So it fit me. And that was 1963.
Okay. And where was that? Where was that located?
Ridgewood.
So you're talking about the old American Dojo on Fresh Pond Road?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. That's one of the earliest dojos in the country, right? I would have to think, especially for Isshin-Ryu.
I was there until like 6 years. Okay. I trained. I made black belt in 3. I made Nidan 2 years after that. And then McGrath was going to start his own business. I don't know what it was, electronics or something like that. And he wasn't going to be teaching anymore. So I asked if I could train with his sensei, Nagel sensei, and could he give me permission? So he wrote a letter for me to give to Sensei Nagel. And I went over to Sensei Nagel, and he said, yeah, you can train here anytime you want. And I was there until Sensei passed away. I was with him. And I came all the way up to, I was number 2. Nagel was number 1. I was number 2. That gave me title to do nothing. I had no power whatsoever.
So for those that don't know,
Nagel was a special person, pure fighter. He did kata, he did good kata, but pure fighter. And he opened up dojo just to see if he could come into the people in Jersey that used to beat him up as a kid. He's very vindictive that way.
And for those that don't know,
I trained with him and Ranger.
Right.
What's that?
I was going to say that for those that don't know, Don Nagel is one of the earliest students of Tatsuo Shimabuku, the founder of Isshin-Ryu. Don Nagel was there very early. Don Nagel also won the Okinawan Fighting Championship as a white belt. So yeah, Don Nagel was a tough guy. Eventually became a New Jersey city detective, narcotics undercover detective, involved in a lot of very dangerous things. So yeah, I met him a couple of times, trained with him a couple of times. You know, another thing about Nagel Sensei is his speed. I mean, his speed was just incredible. His genetics for his ability to move and the speed at which he moved was very impressive.
Yes, he did everything the opposite of people. I boxed for all those years, so I was always moving forward on people, to the side, to the other side, or around people, not backing up. If you were backing up, you're getting your butt kicked.
Right.
And Nagel would step back and change his stance, and then you would move in, and then he hit you with a spin around back kick or a side kick or back fist. It didn't matter. He was too fast.
Right.
I trained with him 3 years every Saturday. I drove all the way to Jersey, trained, and we always did our katas. We always did basics, and then we fought. No mouthpiece, no cup,
no gloves, no chest
nothing.
protectors, no nothing. Yeah, even when I started, it was still that way. So yeah, yeah.
He'd say, "You best fight me hard. If you don't, I'm going to hurt you. And then when you fight me hard, I'm still going to hurt you."
The blood and guts era of karate.
That's correct. That's correct.
And
I started competing when I was a green belt, and I competed every kind of tournament you could think of.
And you told me one time that you applied for a job to teach at Jerome Mackey's.
Yes.
And that Jerome Mackey was looking for a guy to teach Kung Fu. And you told him you didn't know Kung Fu. And he handed you a book. And he said, go home and learn this and come back and start teaching the Kung Fu classes.
That's true. That's my Bayshore dojo. I had a uniform for every different class. And like I did, I go back in the room, look at something. And then we had somebody who was a Kung Fu master. And so I gave him the job. And I just did the jiu-jitsu, which I looked in the back. My jiu-jitsu instructor way back then was Moses Powell.
Okay.
And I was the only white guy in the dojo.
Right. That dojo was in the inner city. Right. Yeah. And so you also trained with the founder of Isshin-Ryu briefly when he came. Now, where did that take place? Did you train with Tatsuo Shimabuku at the American Dojo, or was that in Jersey?
No, that's when Nagel had him in.
Okay.
And everybody in Jersey went in there. I was a brown belt. And he was like 5 feet tall. I was holding the door. He walked under my arm with a hat on. And I just looked at this guy and I said, what is he going to teach me? And he sat in a regular chair with his legs folded up. That's how small he was. So we were doing Kotiki Tai, and the black belts were beating us to death. And then when it came turn to switch, the black belts went away and the brown belts had a pair off. So Shimabuku come down and he was looking at everybody, and then he came to me and he said to punch him. And I'm looking at this guy. I'm 180 pounds, 5'11". I don't want to hit this guy. He says, no, punch. So I punched. And he goes, no, punch. So when he punched, he did a middle block, and then he turned it over like Nagel did and knuckled him. But he blocked this way first. And
right. Blocked the forearm and then struck with the double knuckles.
Right. Yeah. So it worked great against a vertical fist, and it worked great against this type of fist. And he did it, and my arm went numb. And he said, punch again. And I said, Sensei, I'm a very quick learner. No, thank you.
So it's interesting because, Don Nagel said that's the way he was taught to do the block.
Yes. They also, the first time, he started with a high block.
Right,
way.
in Seisan. Right.
And so it would hook your hand and spin down and hit you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting with Nagel Sensei because he never changed his kata.
No. And it was a very sound, basic kata.
Yes, 100%.
And he never put his thumb on top.
Oh, he didn't? Okay.
Never. never. And if he did a Nico Dodge, it was because he stumbled.
Okay.
Otherwise, everything was safe on.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's a natural position. It's probably the best position, right?
Oh yeah,
Totally
yeah.
natural. And so then you also became quite close with Angie Wezu Sensei, and trained with him for
Wazer
many years.
Sensei, when he came over, I met him with John Devine's teacher. I forget who his name was at the time.
Jack Sipe.
And I asked Nagel Sensei if I could train with him because my people traveled all over the country competing, and we could never win doing Nagel's kata.
Okay.
Because if you were an Isshin-Ryu guy, we were doing it wrong.
Right.
And it's really funny. Of the four masters, none of them did the katas the same. Each
Right.
one of them did their kata slightly different. And Mitchum was like promoted 2 years before everybody else. And he did his katas like supposedly the films. Now the films, Shimabuku never wanted to do the films.
Right.
And he's basically walking through them.
Right.
If you know what the stance to that was in, so everybody said, "Oh, we do them just like Shimabuku." Well, good luck. But the idea is that when Wezu came here, he was actually a Nidan, and they put him Yandan because of going to America. He wasn't supposed to come here at all. The person that was supposed to come, his wife said, "If you go there, you stay there." So then Wezu, was married to Shimbuku's daughter, so
Right.
they sent him. Spoke English. And you remember he was a Nidan. He did all the hand katas,
Right.
all the basics, all the weapons katas. And that's pretty amazing for a Nidan.
Right. Right.
Right? He was very strong, very powerful, as you know.
Right.
And he had a personality.
Right.
Who
He had a
could
great
not like
personality.
him?
Right. He was a great personality. You
Right?
couldn't.
He was like Odo. Odo Sensei was Okinawa. Totally different personalities, just beautiful guys.
Right.
And I trained with him to the end.
Right.
And every year he came to this country. What they call made all those videos. Who spread Isshin-Ryu more than Wezu?
Well, it's funny because I remember seeing an ad in Black Belt magazine where you were going to host him for a seminar. And my first instructor, Dennis Fink, would show video of Angie Wezu doing the kata. And here I am, a young kid, and I'm looking at these videos and the videos of Tatsuo, and here now Angie Wezu is going to be in Long Island. And, I asked Dennis, I said, well, we're going out there. Well, I'm not going. And I said, well, I'm going to go. And I went out and you introduced me to Angie Wezu. So I think I was maybe a Shodan, right? And you introduced me to him. And that was where I first met him. And I knew him pretty well too. I would see him on Okinawa when I went, always nice. I went down to John Devine's place a couple of times and trained with him, came out to your place a few times when you had him in and trained with him. And again, like you said, just a great guy, a pleasure to be around, a powerhouse, and did a lot for Isshin-Ryu.
And he never forgot you, right? If you see you, he told you call your name.
It's funny you say that because I went down, the Divine Sensei invited me down to his dojo because he was bringing Wezu Sensei in. So I walk into Divine School and I stick my head around and someone comes over and says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Is John Divine here?" And the student gives me a look like, "Why are you asking for John Divine? Like you should be asking for Sensei Divine." And John comes out and says, "Hey, Mike." I say, "Hey, Sensei, what's going on?" He goes, "Good." He goes, "Hey, Wezu Sensei's in the office. Go say hello." And I walked over. I knocked on the door. I stuck my head in the office, and Wezu Sensei goes, "Mike." He goes, "Mike," right? And I came in, and we hugged, and we sat and talked for a while. And he asked me what rank I was. He knew I was a student of Kichiro Sensei's, and he didn't care, right? Something the Americans could learn from getting hung up on. Oh, you're in that faction, so we can't talk to you, right? And he goes, "What dan are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm Godan." So he gave me one of his chief instructor patches, Wezu Sensei. And he says, "Here,
Right.
presento." And I said, "Oh, Sensei, maybe your guys get mad if you give me this." He says, No, it's okay. You take, presento, And that's just the kind of guy he was. Like, he didn't get hung up on that whole, well, you're with Kichiro, so that means I can't like you, right? Like we all got along, and so it was great, and he'll be missed. I mean, he contributed a lot, and then one of the other things that you did for quite a while was you hosted the Samurai Spirit tournaments on Long Island with Terry Macarone.
Right.
And that's how I met Macarone Sensei, through you too, you know. Um, and those tournaments were great. I mean, traditional tournaments, you had us wear the vests. The referees wore the vests. Um, and for me, a guy who doesn't like tournaments, I'm not really a tournament guy. Those tournaments were actually enjoyable. I mean, they were fun. They
Well,
were,
yeah,
you know,
the ones I did with Terry McCrum were the Greater Long Island Open.
okay,
Samurai Spirit was me.
okay,
It's just mine, and that's was strictly Japanese Okinawa.
right.
We used AAU rules, USA. It was very traditional, and I loved it. And I got, my wife got sick and stuff like that, and then that was, I lost my daughter and my wife within 6 months of each other from
Right.
cancer. So I kind of took a back seat for a couple of years.
Right. And that's where I met Andre Tippett.
Yep.
And he's actually going to be coming on the podcast too. So
yeah, he's a great guy. Great guy.
Yeah.
Great personality. Ichiru.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sensei, tell us about your Kobudo training. Besides, we obviously know Isshin-Ryu, but also we know you've done a lot of other Kobudo training. So why don't you talk about that? Your training with Odo Sensei, and
I trained with Odo until he passed away, because I was with that organization, and that's the only rank I ever took from anybody other than Bruce Heilman. I got promoted from him after that, from their organization. I trained with a lot of Oshiro Sensei, Oyata Sensei, and not from nerve points. Oyata Sensei was one of the best bow people you ever want to face and fight.
Yeah, and I don't want to interrupt you, but you've told me this in the past, and I think that's something that nobody talks about with Oyata. Everything with Oyata is the Tuite, right? But nobody talks about his Kobudo. So
this is what Oyata told me. I said, Sensei, in a fight, trying to hit these points are very, very hard. He says, well, you just hit them a lot. You'll find them. he didn't come out with no type of chart to figure out press this is B, this is C, and this is D. Right. So,
and you said he was very good with the bow.
Yes. The first thing you do is break your thumb so you couldn't hold your weapon. People came to him. We were in Chicago one time, and the guy was telling him how great his sensei was with nunchakus. And so he said, well, I only do bow. So he brought his sensei, and he says, watch what he can do. And he just took it like he was fishing. All of a sudden, the nunchaku was across the room. Yeah. He was a bad guy.
So Oyata Oyata only did bow? That's the only weapon he worked on?
But that's the only thing I've ever done with him, so okay. I don't know.
I'm curious.
And I trained with Oshiro Sensei, and he did Yamaniru.
Right.
And I trained with a lot of different people. I trained with basically, but I got into, like you got into Chinese arts, I got into Filipino arts.
Filipino arts, right.
Then after Santos, I trained with every year he came to New York, and basically, but I never took rank from people because I just wanted their concepts or different things, how to train and stuff like that. So I wasn't in the art long enough to be taking rank from anyone.
Right. Well, you were cross training. You were cross training to gain deeper insights into the arts you were focusing on.
And Nagel never objected to whatever you wanted to do. I would never teach anything I learned from it without his permission.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I remember coming out to you.
I wouldn't insult somebody to do that, but
I remember coming out to your winter camps.
Nagel was.
Yeah, and I would say
Right.
you would teach Filipino
Nobody
stuff.
called one.
You know,
Right.
so you
Well,
teach all
you
these
do it
different
too. I
things.
mean, you got to do it. You know, it's nothing like screamer sticks. And then I got into sea lot, which is very, very good art too,
Yeah.
because these are countries that fight all the time.
Right.
I mean, uh, I don't want to go to Vegas to learn how to fight. It may be good to have a good time. But I
Right.
used to go to Vegas every year when all the martial arts shows were in. We also hosted the Okinawa, me and Terry Macarone, we hosted the Okinawans when they came over here to promote the World
The World
Championships.
Tournament. Yeah, yeah. I
And
was there.
yeah, and we all got up and did our katas,
Right.
and I did Urashibo. And Oyata was there, and he says, Nick, no matter what you do, they're better because they're Okinawan. So, I said, okay. But we did a good job with that. But it used to be me, Terry Macarone, Bob Tayani. We
Right.
worked out together all the time.
Right.
Right? And Tayani was a police officer. He was a transit cop.
Right.
I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah.
And and sadly
Way back.
sadly we just lost the two of them in the last year, a year and a half. So
Right.
both Macaron Sensei and Tayani Sensei. And you introduced
But,
me.
I always I liked your sensei. All the guys you have are great, but I like Feeding Crane.
Right.
I mean, you talk about a
Yeah.
powerful guy.
Yeah, you're talking about Lu
He's
Chang'e.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you came in also when my Taiji master came in.
Right.
You came in a couple of times for that too. I mean, again, here you are, a senior martial artist, and you're still coming and experimenting and exploring other things. And, this is, I think, a lot of modern guys could learn from, instead of having this very narrow view of what martial arts is. Go out and explore a little bit, see what other people are doing. Even Kichiro Shimabuku told me in 1991, he goes, go out and train with everyone you think is better than you and make your own strong Isshin-Ryu. And, he didn't tell me to just train with Isshin-Ryu people. I mean, he said, people that are better than you. And if they do something you like, do it and make your own Isshin-Ryu stronger. And,
Sure.
I think that's what you did. I think you did the same thing.
I believe so. And Kichiro is a very solid guy, down to earth, nothing fancy, but, I wouldn't want to get hit with him.
No.
Or kicked by him.
No.
And, he never brags. He never showed off. He was a real, I always liked him. So other people would, to talk about him, but, said, hey.
Well, McCarthy.
Right.
I just introduced McCarthy to him. McCarthy said to me about him afterwards. He says, Michael, Shimabuku Sensei reminds me of an old-fashioned Okinawan. And he said he's very reserved. He's quiet. He goes, he doesn't brag about anything, but he knows a lot, because him and McCarthy were talking in Japanese. And McCarthy, after we left, said to me, he says, your teacher knows a lot of stuff, and he knows what's going on the island. He knows a lot of stuff. And I says, yeah. I said, he's just not a guy who vocalizes it. He stays to himself. He stays very reserved, But so what was it like training with Odo Sensei?
Odo was just like a Wezu. Once he got you on the floor, you stayed on the floor. And if you were a teacher, we were working Tampa, and he'd keep picking the pace up. Meanwhile, your hands are burning off.
Right.
Because we're working with real Tampa, not some piece of twig.
Right.
And I said to Bruce one night, if maybe I get a little close to him, I hit him once, we'll slow down. Because he'd give everybody a break except us.
Right.
Oh, no, you're a teacher. No, you have to stay on the floor. And once you had him or you trained with him, you loved him. I told him Chatiara.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So, again, though, you see, it's interesting, right? Here's a high-level Kobudo master, and he's interested in learning a particular kata, and his ego is comfortable enough where he says to you, "Hey, could you show me Chat Nyara no Sai?" Right? It's
Yeah,
amazing.
he came every year basically into Pennsylvania, and you always had a great time with him. He always laughed. He always remembered who you were. He treated whether you were a white belt or fifth dan. He treated everybody the same. That's confident. And same with Filipino people. They're down to earth, and as long as you get up there and work out, they're fine. If you sit there and just watch them, they don't kind of respect you. It's like,
right. And that's something I heard in Okinawa. I mean, someone once said to me in Okinawa, I demonstrated Isshin-Ryu Shishi no Kun, Bokata, in Shimabuku Sensei's dojo. And there was a sandan there, and he said to me afterwards, my speed and power surprised him. He says, he asked me, how can I get your speed and power? And I said, practice, right? Because that's always the answer, practice, right? But he said to him, I haven't seen an American with speed and power like this. And I said, well, what about the Americans that come? And he's looked at me and he kind of shrugged his shoulders and says, a lot of them don't do much when they come. They do a lot of standing around.
Picture taking.
Yeah. And, and that's one of the things, you go to Master Kichiro Shimabuku's dojo, I mean, you're working. If you think you're going to just stand around, I mean, and if you are going to stand around, he's going to kind of ignore you and he's going to go to the people that are actually working out. Yeah, I find it interesting that, you feel the same way, that if they see you're serious and you're training and you're really trying to work hard, that they'll work extra with you. Like they're so happy that someone's training and trying to really get it, that they'll really come over and try to help you and correct you. So what weapons did you study with Odo? Did you go through the whole curriculum, or you only did certain ones?
We did Bo, we did Sai, we did Tampa, we did Kama, we did Eiko. And I still teach those katas that we don't have in our system.
Right.
So we do a kama kata. But when I test, I don't test you on their other material other than Isshin-Ryu.
Right. So they're like extra kata.
Right.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I have some extra hand kata that you'll see some of the Isshin-Ryu guys doing well after they make black belt, because I'm like, hey, I know this other kata. If you'd like to learn another hand kata, but it's not a requirement in Isshin-Ryu. Right. It's just an extra kata. Same thing with some of the Kobudo stuff, So yeah,
I mean, same thing when you work with your jiu-jitsu, with the concepts.
Right.
It's the same thing. I used to work out with the Moses, but Mr. V was his teacher. He was a little thin guy, carried a briefcase, always walked around the suit.
Right. Professor
His dojo was right across the street from Moses'.
Yeah, that was Visitacion, right?
Yeah.
Florendo Visitacion was the guy, right?
Right.
Okay.
And one time he did like to do everything on a blackboard, doing angles and all that kind of stuff. And when you trained at Moses' dojo, he had a huge deck, but it was 3/4 inch plywood, and then it was just carpet over the top of it. And then the carpet would shift. So then it was just boards, and then you'd be falling by the time you'd be getting killed doing rollouts. But he'd be working with Moses, and Moses was a bad guy. And now he's doing a good job on him, and Moses getting pissed off because he's doing this in front of all his students, right?
Right.
So Moses complained. So the next thing, he comes and sticks 2 fingers in the side of his mouth, turns Moses over, goes and kicks him about 15 times. And every time he touched Moses, Moses flew. So different times.
Again, very, very different times, right? I mean, you remember.
I just want to state one thing. To be a good fighter, you got to fight, But that doesn't mean you have to be a good fighter to teach. There's a lot of guys that are very good teachers as far as fighting ability. Angelo Dundee I didn't see him fighting in the ring, but he seemed to do pretty good. And the guy, so don't expect your teacher to always fight, but I think your teacher should be open-minded all the time. not be afraid to lose a student because he's going to go somewhere else. A good teacher, if he can't teach you anymore, should send you someplace. So
Well,
that's
listen.
the old way, right? In Okinawa, you used to go and you wore this guy out. They sent you to somebody else.
Well, Tatsuo, John Bartasevitz told me, Tatsuo Sensei told him, he goes, listen, my Kobudo's pretty good, but if you want to really get good Kobudo, you should study Kobudo with a Kobudo master. You're right.
Right.
And, some like, so in case of John Bartasevitz, he went to Fumio Demura. In the case of Advincula, he went to Iha Kataro, right? And they studied with these Kobudo people. In my case, I went to Gakiya Yoshiaki, right? In your case, you went to Odo Sensei. So
Right.
our Isshin-Ryu improved through our Isshin-Ryu Kobudo specifically improved through studying with Kobudo masters. Because let's face it, the first generation guys, they didn't come back with a lot of the Kobudo.
Well, no, Nagel said, these guys who said they trained 20 hours a day and all that. Nagel said, I was a Marine. I had a job. He
Right.
said, I had to go to work.
Right.
He said, he says, I trained, but whatever he showed me, I practiced.
Right.
Rather than being at the dojo every day, he said, I couldn't do that.
Right. Now, did Nagel learn any of the Kobudo kata while he was there?
All they had was Tokomiti
Okay.
and Kusakusai and Kion no Sai.
Right. So did Nagel learn Kion no Sai or Kusan Kusai?
No, but I learned Kion no Sai, and then I learned Kion no Sai from Odo Sensei.
Okay.
So
all right.
that's the Kion no Sai we do.
Okay. And Nagel, when he did Tokomini, did he do the opening different than the way the other first generation guys do it?
I don't remember that
Okay.
much because I never trained with Nagel as far as weapons go.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one
Because
thing I don't have him on video doing. I don't have him doing any of the Kobudo. I would love to see him doing the Tokomini no Kobudo.
He practiced what he learned, and he'd go over and over with it. I mean, his warm up was he had the ball from the ceiling, and he'd kick the ball and he'd keep raising it, and he'd kick the ball until it was the ceiling, and then that was his warm up. Mike Stone did the same thing when I trained with Mike. Is that he gave this big lecture at the school and was teaching my students. And he said, okay, let's work out. And he says, well, aren't we going to stretch out? And he said, I mentally stretched out. I'm warmed up now, So I've had, I was very lucky. Joe Louis was my best friend. People in the era, all those guys liked to fight before they ever studied martial arts.
Right.
And basically, Joe Louis, Phil Wallace, they were both wrestlers. They did a lot of groundwork.
Right.
I met Bruce Lee twice. The guy was a very small guy.
Right.
I mean, the guy was 5'6" and 130 pounds.
Right.
I mean, he was fast.
Right.
And he was supposed to be a deadly fighter, but I never seen him fight. So everything was always a secret match somewhere.
Right. Right. Well, Wally J. I know you know Wally J. And I knew Wally J.
Yeah.
So Wally J I was having breakfast with Wally J, and he told me the story because the movie Dragon had just come out, the Bruce Lee story, which was almost all legend, not a lot of fact. And Wally J goes, hey, you know that story where the guy comes to his place and challenges him, the Chinese guy? I said, yeah. And he says, then they set up the match in the basement with all the Chinese masters watching it. Wally J goes, Bruce Lee told me the story. He said, the guy showed up at my place, challenged me. Bruce Lee said he punched him in the face, and the guy ran off. And Bruce Lee chased him and couldn't catch him. And Bruce Lee said to Wally J, from that day on, I started working on my running, too. I worked on running so I could catch the guy, right? And Wally J goes, so obviously, he said to me, he says, Mike, so that story's not that cool a story, but it's the truth, right? Bruce hit him once, and the guy ran off. He said, but in the movie, they set up a match in this basement dungeon-like thing, and the masters are watching, and it's this big fight. And it's just funny how these stories start to grow into these things that they never were.
Well, Patrick McCarthy, that was his teacher, right? Wally J.
Wally J. And
who was Patrick's first teacher?
Well, his first teacher, I think, was Richard Kim, and there was a guy up in Canada.
Wally J.
Yeah.
Wally J. told us how he trained with all the masters at the cemetery. He used to go to the graves, and he trained at night with them, and that's where he got all this knowledge. So I don't want to, But Patrick is one heck of a guy. He's trained in so many different things.
Oh.
He's done so much research and stuff like that, and people get jealous of him. But he put the time and effort into whatever, and he's a tough guy.
Yeah,
yeah. He didn't have to. He wasn't backing down.
When I was in Okinawa with him, just talking with him and spending time with him. I mean, his list of accomplishments are impressive, and I see where guys, you're right, guys get jealous, and the question is, well, what are they doing? I mean, we all have the opportunity to do different things, right? And I find that people that have done stuff don't get jealous of the other guy. I mean, look, I'm dealing with the same thing with the podcast. The success of this podcast has made some people, jealous. And well, do your own podcast. If you want to do that, do that. But don't complain about this one. So
I wanted to get a trophy made up for the Masters division, and it had guys leaning against the post with their arms crossed.
Well, I remember. I don't know if you remember this. The one year I came out,
didn't get a chance to ever do it.
The one year I came out, and you decided to do a whatchamacallit, an event at the tournament, a division where it was the Masters division, and that you had to pick the name of the kata out of a hat.
Right.
So you didn't know what kata you were going to do. So I get there, and I'm one of the guys. I'm going to compete in that, and you come over to me and say, "I'll never forget it." You go, "Mr. Calandra." I said, "Sensei, how are you?" He goes, "You go good." He goes, "We have a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He goes, "You're the only one that signed up for the Masters division."
That's right.
And I was like, "What are you talking about? There's a whole bunch of red and white belts in the room. Like, what do you mean?" He goes, "Yep, you're the only one. Nobody else is doing it." He said, "So
they wouldn't pick out of a hat. We did, we had Shinto, we had one, we didn't, and nobody would do it."
Right.
And when I was chairman at AAU for a year, I asked for somebody to send a resume to us who would be a technical advisor. And a woman did it. And she was the only one. And all the guys got pissed off as I promoted her to that position.
Right. Well, nobody else applied, right?
Right. Well, I hope to do a podcast with my Marilyn, she's a fascinating person.
Yeah, I'll set that up with Marilyn. Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta do it.
Yeah, I'll set that up in a couple of weeks with Marilyn.
That'll be great. I enjoy what you do. I don't agree with everything that you do, but that you don't agree with everything I do. So that's
hey, I say all the time, if you get two martial artists in a room, if you get two martial artists in a room, go ahead.
The Gracies are teaching all these policemen, right? Ground fighting.
Right.
Now, I don't know what subway they have these cops are taking, going downstairs and plates.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Gracies are very talented people, but I think, they took away chokes from policemen.
Right.
When you use the gun shoot you with all this electricity, sometimes don't work.
Right.
You get a guy on drugs, they don't feel nothing.
Well, so my son, when he first became a police officer out here in Phoenix, he had a guy coming at him with a massive knife in his hand, and he hit him with the taser. And the guy had just gotten out of prison the week before. And what they train them in prison is if you get hit with the taser, hit the ground and roll, and it breaks the wires. So now the juice can't keep going into you. So when the juice hit the guy, the knife went flying out of his hand, but the guy rolled on the ground, it broke the wires, and then he stood up and he came at my son and said, "Let's go." And my son Nick, he's been training since he's a little kid. He punched the guy once in the face, broke his eye socket, his nose, knocked the guy out cold with one punch. But yeah, this is one of the things people don't realize. The taser doesn't always work.
No, and it's tough. The problem in the police department too is that the higher rank they get, the more of a politician they become, and less of a guy.
Right. Right. And again, they keep taking away different methods for them to actually deal with a violent predator. And, it becomes more and more of a problem for the police. I mean, my son talk about it. He goes, Dad, cops need to train more to be able to fight better. He said they should be doing it on their own. They have to train to fight better. He says the
Yeah.
problem is a lot of them can't fight, and that not being able to fight creates more of a problem. And the courses they're doing in the police departments just aren't very good. I mean, they're not practical. The stuff they're teaching is, a lot of it is not, again, doesn't make sense. There's not a lot of common
They,
sense.
they just don't want to get sued. They
Right.
don't care.
Right.
When I worked on the railroad, I worked at nights and carried money at that time. So you learned how to use that punch other than just to punch tickets.
Right. Right. And for those of you that don't know what a punch is, it's a steel thing that the conductor carries on the Long Island Railroad that carries in his hand to punch a ticket, but it could also be used as a weapon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I've had a very, very good career. I just turned 86 and I still teach my black belts here. We're in the garage that I teach in. It's no columns that are in.
okay.
And if you stop teaching, you end up, getting really old looking. I'm old looking as it is, but I don't want to get any older looking.
But you see, Sensei, it's an inspiration, right? You're 86, you're still teaching, right? You're still working. Look, you drove into my old New York school last week to come and see me while I was teaching my Isshin-Ryu seminar, which I greatly appreciated. You stay in touch with me since I moved out here to Arizona. And it's inspiring. It's inspiring to a guy like me. And I say, okay, I hope I get there. I hope at 86 I'm still teaching. I'm still helping people. It's important for young guys to hear this. I mean, we hear martial arts guys retiring. And I remember you saying this to me one time. He goes, so and so retired. And he goes, I remember you said to me, retired? I thought we retired when we were in the ground. That's when I thought martial artists retired. And that's what I think too. Right.
Well, John Devine, he just turned 75, right? And he still trains hard.
Yeah.
And he cross trains, for years, and he's just one of the solid people around.
Yeah.
But there's a few guys that are just very cherished, their
right.
friendship and their knowledge and so on. Patrick McCarthy, I've known forever. And I mean, when he was younger, the biggest thing I would like to know from Patrick is how can he talk without breathing?
Yeah,
that's the secret because
McCarthy Sensei can talk. He's good at it, but he's good at it. He really is.
He is,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when he's teaching a technique, he can take it either 3 minutes or 3 hours.
Right.
Yeah. I love guys like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and he's still producing stuff. He's still producing books. He's updating books. He's finding more material on people. It's amazing. I mean, he's still going.
Good connection to have, and like you're doing, you're finding out a lot of different people that you didn't know before in your podcast.
Right.
That are very, very interesting, which I think is really good.
And what's great is it's opened up a lot of doors, meaning where maybe one guy didn't know another guy, and then I can introduce those two guys. So now you've got researchers that are in contact with each other that maybe weren't in contact before. And then the other thing is a lot of these guys that are writing books and researching, like they'll send something to me. They'll send me something they're working on just to ask me what I think about it. So I get to read these articles and stuff by these guys that are doing, real serious, research. And, I mean, it's great,
Yeah, it's funny, like, I really, really enjoyed training with Mitchum's people, with Ingham's and stuff like that. And, he's another guy that was down to earth, very powerful man, very simple.
Right.
And, unfortunately, he got a stroke and died. That's the tough part. I've lost all my teachers, that they passed on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even me, I'm at an age now where some of the guys, right? I mean, it's life.
Oh, you,
It's just the
you're
way
a
it
young
happens.
puppy. You're a young puppy. Come on.
So,
Your wife keeps you young.
yeah, thank God. Right. But,
She's not going to let you get fat. That's for sure.
no, definitely not. And,
They got to come out and see you guys.
and I want to give Ken a shout out. I know he's in the room with you there. I want to thank Ken for helping to set this up through Zoom. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, he's sitting right next to me here.
Good.
Ken, I got his whole family. I got Matt, and I got his other son.
Okay. Very good.
I just promoted him as his son the fifth time.
Oh, very nice. Congratulations to them.
They train really hard, and
Good.
they're very, very helpful.
Good. Congratulations. I'm glad. Right. That's one of the things that's interesting, right? Like you said before, you tested for Shodan, and then 2 years later, you were Nidan, right?
I tested, but I trained every day.
Right.
When I started, I trained 4 days a week, and then when I got rank, I competed on weekends.
Right.
And like I say, I've been very, very fortunate to run a lot of great guys. Henry Cho, I used to go to his dojo and learn how to do kicks. There was the Three Musketeers at the time, Neu, Cho, and Urban.
Right.
Peter Urban.
Right.
And each one of them were classic people. I went to Cho's dojo one time, and there's this guy in water, a white t-shirt, and it was him because his wife was a designer. He was sitting there dyeing the clothes and stuff like that. And he told me he'd kill me if I said anything. But I mean, he's dead, so he can't.
Right, so we can say these things now. Yeah, I met him. I met him a couple of times at Honda Martial Arts.
Right. Well, they did Jeeta Kwan, 50% hands, 50% feet, and at the time, the government sent only the people that were very, very good.
Right.
And all college grads, so they could get into the colleges.
Right.
Same with the Japanese.
Right. Yeah. Again, a different time. Right.
Yep.
When I met him, he asked me, he said, because I went to Honda to get some supplies. He said, "You have a dojo?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Where?" I said, "In New York City." And I was really young. We're talking 1983. So I'm like 19 years old and 20 years old. And Cho goes, "Where do you have a dojo in New York City?" And I told him where, 96th and East End. He says, "How can you afford that?" I says, "No, it's 2 nights a week. It's at a sports and arts center." He goes, "Oh, you're very smart." He says, "These young guys get off the plane from Korea and they want me to set them up with a dojo in New York City. I send them out to Omaha." That's what he said. He said, because New York City, they can't open a dojo. It's too expensive here. I send them out to the Midwest. I send them down south. He goes, down there, you can open a dojo. You can afford it. Up here, you can't afford it. He says, "Oh, you're smart. You only do 2 days a week."
You have to, in Cho's dojo, you had to, in Cho's dojo, they used to rent you where you could put your wallet and stuff. They used to rent a lockbox. I mean, they made money. So
everything. They made money everywhere. Yeah. Well, different time. Definitely different time. Well, I just want to tell you, Sensei, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you came on. I want to tell you too how much you mean to me all these years. When I had my falling out with my first teacher, you were the first senior Isshin-Ryu guy to approach me and offer help in any way you could. And I've never forgotten that. I often tell people that. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you all these years. I really do.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you.
And it's funny, like your name comes up out here in the dojo on a regular basis. So, I just want you to know that it really means a lot to me,
I'd like to go down there some Saturday and see what they do.
Oh, my guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, go down there. Check them out. They'd love to have you come down there. Jimmy said to me, he says, Sensei Adler said he may come by. And Jimmy's like, "I hope he comes by." And Jimmy said, if he comes by, he said, he'll let you teach. If you want to teach something, go right ahead and teach something. So, but yeah. So again, I appreciate you coming on, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you. And please make sure you get hold of Marilyn.
I will, Sensei. All right, take care.
Thank you again.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview. I always enjoy talking to Adler Sensei. Like I said, we have a long relationship. So it's great to get him on the podcast and hear some of those stories that were kind of funny and also classic from the blood and guts era of karate, amongst other things. We have some more interviews coming up in the future, along with some other things we'll be doing with the podcast. Soon closing in on our 100th episode. All right, so that'll be a milestone. Never thought that would happen. All right. We're closing in on 15,000 subscribers. Never thought that would happen either, but we're getting there. And I appreciate all of you. And please, again, like, share, subscribe. If you enjoy the videos, consider becoming a member. And I will see you in the next podcast. Thanks.